He made himself ruler for life. Military purge raises questions. Amid faction and tussle rumors, the next 5-year roadmap prepared. A question that eternally remains a question.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Explained by NewsX. Today we will discuss what is happening in China, in Beijing, as autumn light crept into the Great Hall of the People. Senior officials of the Chinese Communist Party gathered from 20th to 23rd October 2025 for what on paper was routine, the fourth plenum of the 20th Central Committee. The Central Committee has full members and alternate or candidate members. The primary difference between full members and alternate members is that full members have voting rights. Alternate members attend Central Committee plenary sessions and can presumably voice their views on issues but do not have the right to vote. But beneath the ceremonial facade, there was a subtle alarm. The attendance figures spoke volumes. 168 full members attended and 147 alternates. That totals about 315, but the total strength is 376 members, which is an addition of 205 full plus 171 alternate members. This means that about 16% of the delegates did not show up. This is the lowest participation rate since at least the late 1970s. On your screens, you can see the number of people attending the plenum. If we just compare the attendance of the fourth plenum across the years, you can see that in 2014 the attendance was 363, in 2019 it was 371. The attendance was higher and fewer visible absences. This contrast is stark. What does this mean? Historically, when top meetings of the party suffer low attendance or missing names, it signals shakes in the elite structure, suppressed dissent, removal of officials, and increased centralization of power. One could conclude that this plenum was less about debating policy and more about consolidating control, filling gaps left by the removals, and signaling loyalty. Let's rewind to the context. When Xi Jinping assumed control in 2012, he inherited a party and the party's army that was deeply corrupt. That time he felt that he did not clean the party and rectify it, it would collapse, just like the Soviet Union did. He started an anti-corruption drive that included tigers and flies, the higher and the lower level officials. One more thing that he emphasized since he assumed leadership was that the party must control the gun, meaning the military. The military, the so-called gun under the party, has long been a bastion of both loyalty and potential trouble. In recent months, that tension has become visible in one of the most dramatic purges in decades. On 17th of October 2025, Chinese authorities announced that the Weidong, the vice chair of the military's top body called the Central Military Commission and a member of the Politburo, was expelled from the party and the military. This happened so on the basis of serious violations of party discipline and large-scale corruption. Alongside him were 8 other senior commanders, including Navy Admiral Miao Hua, the former political work chief of the CMC. Why does this matter? Well, He Duong's removal was the highest rank purge in the PLA since the Cultural Revolution era. It seemed a perfect political theatre before the plenum. He was the second most powerful general. He was once upon a time trusted ally of Xi Jinping. A career officer from the Eastern Theatre Command, he oversaw operations around Taiwan. Therefore, his removal represented more than just a corruption case. It signaled a deep factional unease within the PLA. It is interesting to note that Xi had given the deadline of 2027 for the complete control of Taiwan. The dismissal seems like an act to clear the field of potentially troublesome senior officers, then enter the strategic meeting with a clean sweep of loyalty. The purge thus becomes not just about corruption, but about ensuring the PLA is politically reliable, personally loyal, and structurally subordinate. What had happened is that some of the top echelons of the party military were previously either affiliated with other power networks or simply not aligned wholly with Xi's line. By removing them, Xi is tightening the chain of command, the gun is firmly held, and the result? A military leadership that is leaner, more loyal, but also potentially less varied, less contested, and possibly more vulnerable to groupthink or over-centralization. To understand why these purges and attendance stops matter, we need to look at the factional landscape inside the CCP. While the party officially does not recognize factions, observers tally informal power blocks. Three major groupings are often cited. The first is the Xi Jinping faction or the Xi clique. These are the officials whose rise tracks with Xi's career. These include leaders like Zhejiang, Fujian and Xinhua, and who are personally trusted by Xi. The second faction is the Tuanpai or the Youth League faction. These include officials who climbed through the Communist Youth League under former leader Hu Jintao and are viewed as more reformist and technocratic. The third faction is the Shanghai clique. It included the officials who rose via Shanghai and were loyal to former leader Jiang Zemin. This group has been weakened by anti-corruption but still part of the backdrop. The fact that Hivedong and Miahua were part of networks that weren't purely Xi loyalists could explain part of the urgency. The removal ahead of the plenum suggests that Xi felt he needed to clear the slate and ensure the team gathered in the hall were aligned wholly. The low attendance further signals that many may have already been sidelined, under investigation, or simply not trusted to attend. Thus, the plenum becomes a stage not just for policy but for power performance. Who is present, who is absent, who is promoted, and who is removed. In the ordinary course, a plenum culminates in policy outlines for China's next 5-year plan. For the 2025 meeting, this means that the 15th 5-year plan that could start from 2026 to 2030, what's striking is the tone. Caution. Xi warned, and I quote, that strategic opportunities exist alongside risks and challenges, and unforeseen factors are rising. China also acknowledged economic headwinds in the forms of youth unemployment, property slump, and US-China tensions. So unlike earlier 5-year plans, which brimmed with bullish growth targets and glitzy infrastructure commitments, this one seems more defensive, more focused on self-reliance, especially in high-tech, science, defense, and supply chains. The next 5-year plans had these key points. First, China is aiming to increase the AI, tech, and space investment. The plenum also designated space sector as a top priority for the first time, pledging to turn China into a leading space-faring nation over the next 5 years, and promised huge developments of high-tech industries, including nuclear fusion. This 5-year plan aims to push for a birth-friendly society, making childcare and education more accessible. They also pledge to improve elderly care while also slowly raising the retirement age to counter the economic impact of the rapidly aging society and tapping into the so-called silver economy of the older demographic. China's economy has been having a rough time, facing very high youth unemployment rates and crises affecting key sectors including housing and electric vehicles. This is being addressed by massive government stimulus and measures. The 15th plan for the first time explicitly includes strengthening national defense capability and long-term economic social design. The most notable takeaway from this 5-year plan is acknowledgement of pressure from the USA. In the press conference, this was addressed as a complex and severe international environment. The 5-year plan calls for dialogue with the US rather than decoupling and confrontation. It is to be noted that Trump spoke ahead of his high-stakes meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Let's listen in.
A complete deal. I want our farmers to be taken care of, and he wants things also. We're going to be talking about fentanyl, of course. You know, fentanyl is killing a lot of people. It comes from China. And we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about a lot of things. I think we have a really good chance of making a very comprehensive deal.
So in narrative, China is signaling that the next 5 years are a preparation phase rather than expansion phase. It's about stabilizing growth, plugging vulnerabilities, shoring up systems, and ensuring the party's control remains ironclad. Often, what's most telling about the Chinese system is what's not loudly declared. Several rumblings or under the surface tensions are relevant. The first is youth unemployment. With millions of graduates and a weak job market, China faces a social stability risk. The plenum's communique noted this at the rate of 18.9%. The unemployment rate in China has reached its highest since 2023. The second problem is a demographic decline or the problem of aging. This means birth rates have fallen, the population is aging, and the economy's growth engine is shifting. Policymakers are now talking about birth-friendly societies and later retirement ages. If the current trend continues, China will be left with less than ever. The third problem is local government debt and property slump. Performance in Q3 is 4.8%, the lowest since COVID. Many local governments spent heavily on infrastructure and property. Now many are in the red. All of these suggest that the party feels pressure. Economic, demographic, technological, global, strategic. The mechanism of controls are being reinforced. Attendance has dropped, purge accelerated, and the plan became cautious. The biggest threat to China looms is the Trump tariff war. From 1st November, USA will levy 100% tariffs on Chinese imports. Fragile domestic demand has left China's economy heavily reliant on manufacturing and trade at a time of mounting tensions with Donald Trump and his administration. China's next 5-year plan will shape global supply chains, tech race, defense posture. A more cautious China may mean slower growth and fewer spikes of infrastructure expansion abroad, but also a stronger push into self-reliant tech. For India, this means that China may behave in a more defensive posture, yet still competitive in high technology, strategic logistics, alliance building. It also means that China may rely more on internal investment and less on export-led growth, which could shift its global engagement strategy. There are some significant questions that need to be asked about China. How will China end the deadlock with the United States? Will the upcoming meeting of Trump and Xi result into something conclusive? It would be interesting to see what happens in the military next. The purge is still going on, and how the PLA handles Taiwan. The publicly revealed targets of the next 5 years are conservative, and it signals a lower growth era. On that note, we take a short break. We'll be right back.
He made himself ruler for life. Military purge raises questions. Amid faction and tussle rumors, the next 5-year roadmap prepared. A question that eternally remains a question.